Now I have some practice type of CSS that we can go ahead and go through. Now, if you already know this stuff, that's fine. You can go ahead and pause the video and try to go through it. And if this is your first time watching CSS and trying to get a little bit more of an understanding, a basic understanding of how it works, then keep on watching this video. That's what we're going to be talking about here. So when it comes to HTML code and CSS, there has to be some sort of link. And we want to tell the CSS, hey, where are we wanting to apply this effect to? So think of it as the CSS is the skin, the HTML is the body. We're trying to do some skin at the body in order to shape it, to make it look good. We have these things here called elements. We also have classes and IDs. Now, in CSS, if I wanted to target a class, I always tell students this, is if you remember in middle school, high school, we go to classes. Classes have periods. And so anytime we are trying to target a class, we need to start off with a period. And you can see that right here, box with the curly braces. And notice that is the syntax for utilizing CSS, is these little curly braces on here. And it's saying, hey, I'm going to look through this HTML document and I'm going to look for a class because I see a period here. Box, and I'm going to apply a certain styling. I'm going to adjust some properties on there that are non-standard, because every time we throw an element onto the HTML page, there's a standard format that goes with it. There's a standard property that comes along with it. And what we're doing is we're modifying the properties that we want to adjust. So with that being said, let's go ahead and go through a few things here. So again, we're targeting the box, and it says make the height and width of each one of these boxes to be 100 pixels. And so there's a property out there that we can adjust, which is height and then width. And so the way that we're going to identify that in the CSS is we're just going to type out the word. And notice that I am in the curly brackets here. And once I come up with the property, I'm going to put a colon on there. Okay. And after the colon, I'm going to tell it, hey, I want it to be 100 pixels. And then I'm going to put a colon because that's just like a period at the end of a sentence. I just want to make sure that, hey, the next line of code is a different property and value. So you can kind of see that in the CSS, we have the height, which is the property, and then we have the value on the right side of the colon. So height, colon, 100 pixels, semicolon. And it's always going to be this type of pattern that we're going to see, where it's going to be property, colon, value, semicolon. And if you forget your semicolon, it's going to make your CSS a little bit worse. So always remember the semicolon at the end, otherwise your code breaks. So utilizing that example here that we show you, and I always do this in a live class, and I'm like, all right, so our next property is going to be width. So how would I write that out if we now have a template or a guide on how this CSS kind of works? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to name that property width, okay, because that's a valid property for us to use. And then we want to make that one 100 pixels as well. Now, we're not seeing anything because we don't have a background color that's different than white. If you remember, I told you that, hey, we are adjusting the properties that are outside of the normal properties. And so whenever we are putting an element out there, it has some default property. Right now, the default happens to be white, so we can't see anything. So we can come down here to box number 2. And again, if I was teaching this live, I would say, do you notice anything a little different about the box, which is a class, and then I have box 1 down here? What's the main difference that you see so far? Well, this one has a pound sign for the older folks, or a hashtag for the newer folks. And so the way that I kind of think about this, just like classes have periods, well, IDs, we are given ID, a driver's license, right, or a social security. And those are typically associated with numbers. So that's how I kind of remembered it going through this. So we are targeting box number 1. We're not targeting the other boxes. Notice that classes, I'm targeting all of them. So anytime it comes to a box, then it's going to apply a height and a width to this. So let's come down here to the box number 1, and let's go ahead and apply some of these properties that we want to put on here. So it says to do here. Let's go ahead and make the background color green. Now, again, not knowing what are valid properties, we can always Google search, hey, how do you change the background color utilizing CSS? And you can always go about it that way. But the property that we want to target here is background. And then we want to put a hyphen in there. So anytime a property might have 2 words, we want to separate that with a hyphen. And then we're going to follow that same pattern, that same template that we had earlier, which is property colon and then the value. And whenever we're doing colors, I always like to start off simple here. We can do green, and then we can put the semicolon there. Now, there's various ways to apply colors. You have RGB values, you have hash, you have text code values. So there's multiple ways of doing colors. And in this video here, that's not going to be that important. We're just going to utilize named colors to get the CSS ball rolling. All right. So perfect. We read that box 1 is now green, but I don't see the other boxes colors. And again, that's because the default happens to be white. All right. Box number 2, it says, let's go ahead and color this one red. So now that we have a perfect template to use, just like we used in box number 1, we can kind of code off of it, right? What did we do to change it to green? Well, let's just go ahead and do the same thing, but this time we're going to do red. So you see that they're now stacked on top of each other. Okay. Next, I have a to-do. It says, hey, we need to make the background color yellow of that 3rd box. But I made this in a way for you to utilize one of the models, the templates that we've shown you prior, to kind of think about it. And hey, how am I going to target that last box? And just follow that pattern that we've seen. So come down here, we want to make sure that we're targeting it, and we're utilizing the ID. And so that's going to be the £. And then we want to just name out the ID, right? And it's all going to be smashed together. So it's the £, with the box 3. And then this color has to be yellow. So we're going to do background color, and then we're just going to do yellow. Now, as I mentioned earlier, various ways to do colors. If you are looking for those named colors, and there's a lot of them out there, just do a Google search of the CSS named colored values, and you can see them all that they have. So now they're all yellow, or the last box is yellow, right? And we have the red in the middle, and then we have the green on top. And then for the very last thing on the to-do is we use container that is kind of wrapping all those boxes. And it would be really nice to maybe stack them the other way, where they're all in one line. Because whenever we're talking about HTML, each div inherently is a block. It's really all the way across the page. But what we want to do here is tell the HTML, hey, treat this not as a full block, but let's go ahead and do a flex instead, a flexbox. So we're just going to go ahead and do display and then flex. And then you'll see that they're all stacked up like so. Okay. So once you have all that edited, then you are able to go ahead and come up here to save, and it will save it on your project. Okay. It will ask you, where would you like to save it? And you can put it in a folder on CodePen, or you just put it on your main wall, but you're going to be able to save it, and that way you can reference it later. So how do you share this with somebody? Down here at the very bottom, you'll see the share button, and you'll be able to click on it and choose how do you want to share. And we're not doing Twitter. We just need to copy the link, and you're able to share once you get to that point of wanting to share projects. Okay. So hopefully you ended up going through this whole video here and taking a look at CodePen, Like I said, it's a very nice way for us to be able to write some code down, and we would be able to see it without having to bring out Visual Studio Code. All right. So we'll see you in the next training videos.